Holding the page went to Ois Beis and went into Ois Gimel, and we're holding in the middle of Ois Gimel. I think we'll start from Ois Gimel, just easy to follow. So basically, he starts over the mashal. It's based on a pasuk in Eicha, where the pasuk says, "Chelki Havaya Omra Nafshi," which means my soul says, "I choose. My portion is Hashem." So Medrash says, what does it mean? My portion is Hashem. Mashal to a king that he's traveling and he goes into a new country and he's traveling with his ministers. And the people in the country look at the king and his ministers, and one of them says, I'm going to choose this minister, sort of to be connected to him. Another one says, I'm going to choose the other minister. The third one says, I'll choose the third minister. But there was one person there, he was smarter than all of them, and he says, I'll choose the king. And what is his reason? Because the king is permanent and everybody else is not permanent. They could be eliminated, they could be replaced by someone else. And the question of the Mamar is, number one, you don't have to be a very big chacham to understand that the king is a better choice than the minister. Anyone can understand it, even a child. Second of all, the reason that's given is because the king is permanent and they're not, is also a question. The reason, even if the other ministers would be somehow also permanent, it still would make more sense to choose the king over the ministers because the king is higher and greater than the minister. Those were the questions. So now he goes into explaining, and that was the mashal, by the way, I didn't say the nimshal. The nimshal is that Hashem is the king, his ministers are the sun, the moon, the constellations. Through them, Hashem gives hashpah to the world. So the non-Jews, the other nations of the world, choose. Some worship the sun, some worship the moon, some worship the constellations. But we say we're only choosing Hashem himself. That's the mashal. So the question here is, why does it require chachma? The whole Maimer is going to explain this question. Why does it require chachma? Why does it require extra wisdom? Isn't it simple that we should choose the king over the ministers? Let's start from Gimel, which is 193 in Lessons in Maimar. On the surface, this could be explained based on something which is well known. Those people who worship the idols, in the beginning, they had no doubts that the Eibishter existed. Adam Rishon knew the Eibishter existed. He gave it over to his children. They all knew that. So where did Avodah Zarah come into the picture? How did idol worship come into the picture? Yadu, they knew Shashepa, Shenishpa Ba'aretz Adei Kechov Mazolis. They knew that even though there is things happening in the world because of the stars and the constellations. In fact, there's a pasuk in Chumash that says so. Memeged Tvur Shemesh, Memeged Gerish Yerachim. There are things that happen because of the sun and things that happen because of the moon. But the truth is, it's not that these entities themselves, in their own right, have the power to be mashpia. Page 194. And the one who is being mashpia is the Eibishter. But the Eibishter is doing it through them. And that's where they came to do Avodah Zarah. And Hashem told, they made this mistake. And they thought, they thought that they're doing it all in their own free choice. They're just like a child is watching a show of watching how new, what is the show called?
What's the what called? Oh,
No, I'm saying
it's better. Seriously.
No, I'm just saying what you do is you take fake people, tie them to strings, puppets, and you move it around, and the kids look at it and they think that they're really talking, And they don't realize, oh, somebody's pulling the strings. That's how they saw the sun and the moon are doing things, and they thought that the sun and the moon are doing things on their own. But the reality is, Abish is pulling the strings. That's what they thought. In other words, we're not denying that things are happening in the world because of the sun and the moon and constellation. And they're not denying that the Abishter is in charge. But the difference between the emes and what they made a mistake is that we understand that they have no independent choice, and they thought they have some sort of a choice. But the truth is, the other emes, they didn't know the truth. Shein lem b'chir klal, they have absolutely no choice, and they're kigarzim b'yad ha'chaitzet. So please underline this word kigarzim b'yad ha'chaitzet, and in the list of terms you'll have it there. Here, the list of terms in the booklets, in the workbook, is actually the first one on page 40. I'm going to point it as we go along, because we said that this time we're going to do tshuva. Instead of going back to all these things much later, and then we'll forget what it's about, we'll do it as we go along. These words, means like an axe in the hands of the chopper. And this is a term you'll find in a lot of my marim, and it's based on a pasuk in Tanakh. And it means it's that no, just like the axe has no choice, it's just a tool. That's how everything in the world is just a tool. But because they didn't realize that, therefore, they bowed down to the stars and to the constellations, and they worship them. Why? He gives two reasons. Page 195. Based on their mistake. What's the mistake? That ashpa that comes from the stars and the constellations comes from their own choice. Therefore, there was two things that they believe that they have to do, two reasons. One reason is they should be thanked. We know they're just supposed to acknowledge and show recognition to someone that does a favor. So same is here, even though it's Hashem that's doing it, but being that they also have some input, we should acknowledge that and thank them. Aderech, here's another term. Chamra lemora tevus l'shakya. This is number 2 on the list, on page 40 in the terms. And that is the quote from Gemara, the wine belongs to the owner, but the waiter deserves a thank you. So they understand that the waiters are not the people who own the place, and not the people who invested money, and they're not the people who even invited me. But the waiter is just bringing the food to the table, but that little bit of an input, he deserves a thank you. And that's what people do. Not only a thank you, but today people also give tips because the waiter is serving me. So they thought the same thing is here. That's one reason. Second reason is, Gam, the Fito Usam, this is a little bit deeper. They actually thought this will make a difference in what they're going to get. If the stars and the constellations have choices, by worshiping them, they will give them more hashpah. So just like a king, if you show that you're subservient to the king and you accept his sovereignty and you're loyal to him, so then the king will be nicer to you and give you more. So they felt that they worship these entities, they'll give them more because they felt that they're they have some sort of input themselves. So this was stage 1, the first mistake. This led, and from this it evolved a bigger mistake. As we know, that the way the Yetzer Hara works is step by step. First, he makes us do something small, and the mistake is a little bit more subtle, so we don't recognize that we're going off the straight path. And then a little bit more, and a little bit more. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Never mind, I'll take it.
Okay, you can take it actually, because 1, okay, 2, no, 3, but 4. Then I'm gonna wait for Pesach. I have 4 cups. But thank you anyway, and I might end up taking the 4th also. That's so sick. From this, what evolved was it came to a much bigger mistake. That they thought, in other words, the later generation, their belief was even more distorted. They said, here again, this is a pasuk, but it represents an ideology, a belief. What's the belief? That Hashem abandoned the world and he left it in the hands of the stars and the constellations. And only they control, not like we said before when it comes to a waiter, that really everything that's happening is because of the owner. And the waiter has a little bit of an input. They bring the food actually to the table, that's all. Someone else cooks it, someone else prepares it, someone else paid for it, someone else organized it. They just bring it from the kitchen to the table. But the second mistake, the lower level, was that they believed that B'chlal, Hashem created the world, and after he created the world, he abandoned it, and he said, this is not for me. Hashem is busy with higher things than that, and this he left into the hands of these constellations and the stars and the sun. For this, there's another example. A king, Shamina, Sarim Lahanigis Hamadina, the king appointed ministers that they should be the one to run the country. They lead the country. So basically, there's a certain area where this minister is in charge, and a certain area with another minister is in charge. The fact that they have the authority to do what they're doing is everyone agrees that they didn't get this authority on their own. The king is the one that gave them the authority. Nevertheless, after the king gave them that authority, from that point on, it's through the ministers. Page 197, and the king himself doesn't get involved in how things should run. In other words, on the contrary, the king doesn't want to get involved. The whole purpose of appointing a minister is that there should be a person who is intelligent, understands how to run a country, and he should be able to make independent decisions. The king doesn't need someone in charge of the country that's going to knock on his door every day and say, should I move my right hand? Should I move my left hand? Should I do this or not do this? The whole point is to find someone that can make independent decisions. If it's something huge, then of course it's understood that the king has to get involved. That's the parentheses. Milvad the prokim rechokim, except for rare occasions, mishul tzera gadol, there's an extreme need, something big is going on, and then the king has to get involved. And it's in a sense, we don't have kings today, but it's a similar system. We have a president of a country, so he's in charge of the whole country, but he's not in charge of every single state and every single city and every single borough. That's impossible. Doesn't make any sense. So there's a person as a governor. He's the one who makes all the decisions for New York State, and same with other states. It doesn't mean that he can just do whatever he wants. If he does something which goes against the general laws of the country, then of course the higher authorities get involved. But up until that point, what's expected of him is Nafka to make his own decisions and use his own intelligence how to run things in the context of the way things are set up. And the same is in a business. If you are owner of a business and you have 10 branches to your store, so you get a manager for each branch. You don't want the manager calling you up every minute of the day. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I buy this? Should I sell this? Should I hire this person? Not. You want them to make these decisions themselves because you can't run 10 stores. So, times when you sit down together and you make decisions, but generally speaking, you want each individual to run that department. So on a larger scale, this is what they believe. So this is a much worse denial of Hashem than the first one, because in the first case, they still believe that Hashem is involved. But they believe that the Chavazos are a little bit involved. This one is saying Hashem is not involved at all. The fact that the nations of the world refer to Hashem as Elokod Elokaya, this includes both things. What is What is the Rebbe referring to? So this, again, the source for this is in Gemara. We have a copy here. No, we don't. You just have to trust me, whether you like it or not. Yeah, first of all, I just want you to take a look at page 21 in the references, just to see the source, where it's coming from. It's page 20 and page 21. Page 20, on the bottom where it's underlined, says, Hayispar Hagarzen ala Chaytzev. Will the hatchet, glory, meaning will the hatchet be glorified or be complimented by the one who chopped with it? No, of course you're talking about the one who chops with it, not the actual the axe. On the second page, you have the other term. And then he said to me, you have it on top of the page and on the bottom of the page. Have you seen, Son of Man, what the elders of the house of Israel do in the darkness, each man in his paved rooms? For they say Hashem doesn't see us. Hashem has forsaken the land. Why doesn't Hashem see us? Not that he's not capable. He's not interested. Hashem is busy with other things that are important to him. But the world, the earth, the earthly world, it's a low world, Hashem is not involved. Ozav, he abandoned it. And at the bottom of the page, you see it again. But they have said Hashem has forsaken the land. Hashem does not see. So they're not saying there's no Hashem. Chas v'shalom. It's a different kind of denial. There are people who don't believe in Hashem. These are saying we believe in Hashem. We believe He created the world. We believe He actually created these entities to run the world. But after that, He let go. So in Gemara says that they say the Eibishter is called Elokad Elokaya, the God of all gods. So now you see it more clearly. They're actually referring to these entities as gods. What about Hashem? So he's the God of all gods. But really, they're also gods. What does it mean they're gods? They have independent ability to make choices and do things as they wish. So the Rebbe is saying now that both levels that we just mentioned, of the denial of true Emunah, both of them would be included in Elokad Elokaya. In other words, let's see inside. Even those who go so far as saying that Hashem abandoned the earth, they also still refer to Hashem as Elokad Elokaya, the God of all gods. So you see two things there. Number one, they recognize that Hashem created the world. In addition to that, they're also admitting if he's the God of all gods, that means he's greater than them and he could rule over them. In other words, this recognizing with referring to everything else as God, they still recognize Hashem's place. A third thing, even according to them, that the stars and the moon and the constellations are gods and they got to run things. The fact that they have the authority to run things and have influence on this world, they agree and they admit it's not because of themselves, that they just came to be gods. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu Naslam Kayach, they still believe that it's the Eibishter that gave them the strength and the authority. The Dugma Sari HaMelech, going back to the analogy of the king and the ministers, Shahamanhigim es Hamadina, those people are running the country, even though they're running it independently, their own choices, but they also will admit and agree and they will not deny that why are they running it? Who gave them the authority to run it? Hamelech mina Yisrael, the king appointed them. So certainly those people will say Elokad Elokaya are also recognizing that Hashem is the God of gods. He's above all of them. Even those that are so far off that they think that these entities are gods. On the other hand, Gam HaToros, even those that believe just a little tiny mistake, Shashef Hashanishva HaKadosh Baruch Hu Adei Kachov Menzolos, Nichla bedakos balakot alakayo. Even though they believe that Hashem is still in charge and He's running everything, but if they believe that the entities are like a waiter, which means they have a little input, there's a little area where they can use their own choices. This is also means in different words that they're referring to them as gods. Why are they considered gods? They don't believe that they're gods. They believe that Hashem is the Eibishter, and they just have a little input. The answer is Kigam Zeh, even this. The fact that they believe that these entities can do what they wish to do, whether they should give hashpah or not give, like the waiter could decide if I want to give this person food or not. He could decide if I want to give this person first or give one of this person last. He decide whether I give the person a bigger portion or a smaller portion. He can make those decisions. So if you would say they can make any decision, even one iota of a decision, who inyan shel shlita elokaya, that means that they're referring to them as gods. Because the real belief in Hashem, shlilas who inyan delokim acherim betachlis, in order to recognize that you're not allowed to believe in other gods. That's what it says in Seres HaDibros. Just to point out that this is actually the wording that's used in the Seres HaDibros. Let's take a look inside on page 22, when it says the first one of the 10 commandments, I am God that took you out of Egypt. But the second commandment is, you shouldn't have any other gods. That means any Elokim Acherim is something which is Avodah Zarah. What is Elokim Acherim? So the Rebbe is saying the only thing that could really negate all other gods is Dafke Ayidiyah, if a person believes Shekol Hamumutzoyim, that all those things in the world that are intermediaries and through them Hashem gives Hashpah, everything Urak Yigaz and Biyad HaChaitziv. They're all only like an axe in the hand of the chopper, and they don't even have one iota of free choice about anything. And now we can understand why it says that the one who chooses the king is very smart. That the person that says, I choose the king, it requires wisdom to recognize that. Why? Is the fact that you didn't know the truth. That all the intermediaries, that through them Hashem gives hashpah to the world. It's only like an axe, like a tool. It's because of their great understanding. In other words, they're perceptive and they're able to perceive the emes that it's only a tool. They see the inner truth. Meaning Hashem created the world in such a way, in such a perfect way, that on the outside it looks clearly, almost undeniable, that all these things have their own choice. And therefore, to be able to see beyond that and see the emes, it only looks that way, but it's nearly not that way, requires wisdom. I mean, especially by looking into Torah, where it says that if you do good things, they'll be rewarded. You do the opposite will happen. You see two people, one person gives a lot of tzedakah, and he loses all his money. The other person doesn't give any tzedakah, and he's getting richer every single day. You think to yourself, Hashem is running that? That's Teves. This person's giving away all his money. He became poor. This person's holding on all his money and investing it, and it's growing and growing and becoming richer every single day. This person keeps his store closed on Shabbos. Shabbos is a very big day. There's a lot of money coming in on Shabbos, and because he's closed, he doesn't make as much money. The other person who keeps the store open on Shabbos, he's actually raking in a lot of money just from that one day in the week. So it looks clearly that it's Al Pi Teva. These are the reasons why these things are happening. It doesn't look like there's someone higher that's running and making things happen. And of course, the whole list of things that we look at, and Hashem created the world, that the concealment is so powerful, so strong, that you need wisdom to look beyond that and to see that it's not emes. Today, everybody's concerned about the new phenomena which we have, which is called AI. You have no clue sometimes. Is it true? Is it not true? It looks very true. It's artificial. It's all Baba Mises. But it looks like this person did this and said that and did another thing. And you have to have an understanding to recognize, is it emes or not? The Eibishter created the whole world. It's a little bit of an artificial thing over here. It's not emes. It looks so emesic that this one's in charge. He's the one who's in charge. Like everybody got all hysterical because a big anti-Semite became the mayor of New York. But he doesn't control anything. The Eibishter controls. The Eibishter is in charge. So you have to daven a little bit more tzedakah, bring Mashiach a little bit sooner. But when people get hysterical, the hysteria comes from the fact that you think that he's in charge. Yeah.
Okay, so him, are they in the exact same category? Do you like a matter? I think are the angels and and
Angels.
huh?
The angels.
Yeah. I think that's insane. Is this
So later in the Mime, he's gonna talk about angels. Yeah, the whole section.
that little guy that was inside of my age saying his mother. I keep like mouth was a machine. Can't speak.
Is from the surface perspective, the way we see things on the outside, it looks like the hashpah comes from the stars and the constellations. It looks like because they have a certain quality, like we just saw what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, let's say the war. So those who are lacking emunah in Hashem don't stop praising the IDF, the army, the Israeli army. And isn't it not true that the Israeli army is incredibly skilled and they can do things that no other army ever did? So dafka because they're so well trained, and dafka because they're so capable, and dafka because their technology that they've developed is so amazing, because they used, as we know, different missiles and other things which they got from the United States, but they added more things to it, even more than what the United States has, and they did incredible things. So we attribute it to them. Again, people who are lacking Emunah Hashem, of course, it's because they're so strong. Well, the early Zionists who started the country, they were people who unfortunately didn't believe in Hashem. So there was a famous song that they sang. They took words from Tehillim, and the words are, Mi malel gvorot Hashem, who could speak the greatness of Hashem. In other words, there's not enough words to describe the greatness of Hashem. So they took out the word Hashem and they put in the word Yisrael. Who could speak about the greatness of Israel? In other words, they're attributing all the success and all the greatness and everything accomplished, and it really looks like that because of all the, like it says, it looks like it's happening because they have quality, they have the skill, they have the ability to do the great things that they're doing. But that in itself is from Hashem. And by the way, unfortunately, what happened October 7th is exactly the proof of that. Here's a country that their intelligence is like beyond any other country. Anytime anyone sees anything that is really out of the norm, they'll say right away, this must be the Shin Bet because no one else can do a job like that. And yet, look what happened on October 7th. What does it show you? That the Eibush is in control. And when he wants things to happen, they happen one way. And Chas v'Sholom, other than it happens in another way. But on the surface, it looks that way. And that's why he says what we need is, you need wisdom to see through it. Going back to the list of things, I skipped. Let me do two more lines. Page 202. The fact that Yidden know and recognize that everything in the world that's doing things, all the, not only the sun, the moon, constellations, but all the forces in the world that make things happen. It's only from Hashem. They're able to look past the way it appears on the outside, and they can see the emes, that the emes is, it's all from Hashem. I don't want to go to the questions and the details because it's going to stop the flow, but I just want you to look at the list, page 40, and write down what number 4 is. Bedakos. What is bedakos mean? We had it a few times. So, but now everybody knows what? Abstract. No, you must be thinking of a different word. No. What? Check. Oh, you mean like to be bodek, to check something? No, it's the same letters, right? But it's a different root. Bedakas here means in a subtle way. We just had this on this page. I should have stopped when we did it. But when he said that those who believe that Hashem is in control, but the stars and the moon and the constellation have some sort of a choice themselves, it's avodah zarah b'dakos, meaning in a more subtle way. It's not outright avodah zarah saying Hashem is totally not in control, but it's in a smaller scale. So dakos is a word that means in a subtle way. It's on page 198, you'll see. And even though they're not saying it, but in essence, they're saying that God, they're calling these constellations as gods. The mere fact that they're attributing some free choice to them. And Elokim Chayra means Avodah Zarah, that's clear. So, this is a big mistake that people think Avodah Zarah means that you don't believe in God. That's not Avodah Zarah. That's not the only thing which is Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is even if you believe in God, but you also believe that there are other forces that have input into things going on in the world. These idols. So people who worship the idols, they still believe Hashem was in control, but they believe that he gave it over to these forces. Okay, so now let's continue in David, page 204. Now the Rebbe is going to explain that this explanation that we just gave, why he's called a Chacham, is still not sufficient, not enough. There's something missing. What? However, maybe Moshel Alzemi Milach V'Duchsen, being that the king, the Medrash compares this to a king and his ministers. Avsham Moshel V'Duchsen Bali in the Moshel, the ministers do have free choice. In Bali B'chira. So this is another word on the list, page 40. It's number 6 on the list. Bali B'chira means those who have choice. Bali B'chira. Humans are considered Bali B'chira versus all other creations. In other words, with the officers, it is actually true. If I create a relationship with a minister, with an officer, in our language, with a congressman, or with any kind of political person that has political power in a certain area, I will be able to get certain benefits from him. He could actually make choices to give me a license for something, permission for something. He can give me some sort of benefit because he's in charge of this area. And being that we're using that in the Mashal, it's logical to assume that the fact that they choose this minister is because that they could, and they are capable of giving more to those people that choose them. Like we see the way it is in politics, that people who are involved in elections and they're helping this person get elected, as a result of that, that person will later give them payback. They'll help them out. But the loika nimshal, this is not like the nimshal, that Avodas Kechavim, which means the idols and the stars and the moon and all these things, ein ma'elis klum, what you're worshiping them doesn't help you. Macha sheinam b'alei, they don't have any choice. So, and the fact that the Medrash doesn't make that mashal, does draw that parallel, moving it's understood. The fact that the smart person says, I choose a king, מפני שעבודת המלך היא חשובה אצלו יותר מהתועלת וההשפעה שהיא לידי הסורים. The Medrash is alluding to something that by worshiping these idols, there is a possibility that you'll get something more. And nevertheless, this person will choose Hashem, even though he'll get less, he'll choose Hashem over choosing the minister that will help him get more. What does that mean? What's the main primary reason? Why the nations do worship the moon and the sun, and the Yidden don't? It's not just because they make a mistake and they think that the stars and the moon and the constellations have choices, and we think and we know the truth that no, they're only an X. But the deeper reason is what's more important to them is the sustenance that they're going to get, the money, the power, and everything else that comes along with it. And therefore, they see that by not serving Hashem, but by serving these intermediaries, they're going to get more. But by Yidden, what the main thing is to serve the king. And therefore, they're ready to forego, they're ready to give up on the benefits that they might get and rather choose the king, because that's really, that's the better thing to do, the thing that's the more correct thing to do. Now, what does it mean that you gain more by worshiping the other things than worshiping Hashem? How does that work? He explains the following, 206. Oops, the clock. Okay, let's do a few lines, then tomorrow we'll continue. The main reason why they worship them, because in other words, it's not the stars and the moon and the constellations, but basically it's the klipa, the forces of klipa that Hashem gave them power to do things. The klippas give them hashpah, give them sustenance. And by them worshiping with the klippas, they get more sustenance. And what's the difference? We just learned the whole mimer. How in order to receive from Kedusha, you have to have bittul. Only bittul makes me a vessel for Kedusha. Those who don't want to have bittul, bittul means giving up my identity, surrendering my identity to Hashem who's higher. So therefore for them, they would rather get hashpah from klipa, not from kedusha. In other words, Hashem gives the whole world hashpah, but He could give hashpah directly from Him, and He can give it through klipa. They'd rather get it through klipa because to get directly from Hashem, you have to have bittul. To get through klipa, you can get it if you don't have bittul. Klipa itself is not bittul, so surely I can get hashpah from klipa without bittul. So that's why they worship them to get this hashpah. But they lekabel hashpah mehem ein tzarich bittul. Look at this b'Zohar. It says in the Zohar, the ruach misaba, which means the spirit of impurity, is damin todir. It's always found b'magana b'rekanya, in a place that's empty, and a place that there's no cost. You don't have to pay any price. Which it's a figurative way of saying there's nothing to give up. As it says, we ate in Egypt without pay. So it's a pasuk in Chumash where the Yidden were complaining to Moshe, we want to go back to Mitzrayim where we were able to have all our food chinam for free. Wait a second, for free? They worked pretty hard. They were slaves. So the Gemara says it meant chinam in a mitzvah. They didn't have to do mitzvahs. So the Arizal, the story with the Arizal, that he was once he once went to buy an esrog, and it was naturally a beautiful esrog, and he asked the owner, how much does it cost? And the other owner said, I don't want to take any money from you. I don't have to take money. To me, the fact that I'm having the schus, that you're buying an esrog from me, is worth all the money in the world. So he said, no, it says Mitzrayim Chinam. Whatever is related to Mitzrayim, that's for free. If it's Kedusha, you have to pay. What does that mean? To receive something of Kedusha, I have to give something of myself. If you ever pay attention to the dollars, people bring the Rebbe things. People bring, this is a book that I published, this is a picture that I drew. People brought their creative things to the Rebbe that they knew the Rebbe would appreciate it. And whenever they brought it, the Rebbe said, if you give me something, I have to pay. And they would give $1. Now the dollar usually doesn't cover the cost of whatever it is that they did. So it's symbolic, but giving it's a form of giving of myself, then I can receive from Kedusha. Okay, the clock is ahead of me already. I can't fight with him anymore. We'll stop over here on page 207. Can we continue? Yes. It's funny, we just had a class about this in the Pirkei Avos class. Same idea. We'll talk about it tomorrow, where it says the only way to acquire Torah is by working hard. Why do you have to work hard? The answer is that's the bittul.
Do bus again. And after that.
Probably after Rosh Chodesh. Stop
It's okay.
Oh, this has Basar Lagani in it. Well, there's 2 Basar Laganis.
Yeah,
There's actually 3.
that's the 10.
There's the original Basar Lagani that the Friedrich Rebbe said. There's the Basar Lagani that the Rebbe said, which was his first liner. And then there's the specific chapter Basar Lagani that every year the chapter that we focus on is different chapters. So I want to do that also. And even that, there are 2 of them. There's a lot of work to do. Okay. Well,